Hey everyone, and welcome to our Consumer Relationships Guide review. This is number 3 or 4 in the document series. We're just going over the Consumer Relationships Guide today so that it's a very straightforward document, and we just make sure that you're aware of the relationships that you can get into while in a real estate transaction. This document goes over the 3 types of relationships that you can have with a real estate professional, and also just the responsibilities of both the agent and yourself to the agent in a transaction. I'm going to go through this one relatively quickly. At the bottom, we just sign it saying that we have read it and we understand everything. Of course, if you don't understand something or have any questions, you can always email us at info@revre.ca. We will be more than happy to get back to you as soon as possible with regards to your questions. So let's get into this one. Buying or selling a property is probably one of the most important financial decisions most people will make. This guide explains the different relationships that you can get into with a real estate professional. Each has its own legal meaning and responsibilities, so it's important that we understand them. And we have to give you this guide whenever we're doing a transaction, even if we're not representing you, in the case of many of our transactions where we have a non-representation agreement in place. So there's 3 types of relationships in the real estate world. Number 1 is a real estate brokerage can represent you, and this is called common law agency. Second, an individual real estate professional can act as your agent, and this is called designated agency. So we at Revre practice designated agency with the clients that are going forward with our full real estate services, getting the agent, providing all of the services that you would get in an agency relationship. And finally, you can be a customer to a real estate professional. So if you're a member of the public, you're a customer to the real estate professional. If you don't have a signed agreement with a real estate professional, you're also a customer. An agent is somebody that acts on behalf of you with your permission. So if an agent is an individual or an agent is a brokerage, it depends on whether it's common law or designated agency. And we appoint agents to you. You'll be asked to sign a written agreement that explains both the agency's responsibilities to you and also your responsibilities to the agent. We'll get into the agent's responsibilities to you first. We owe you 6 different responsibilities. 1 is undivided loyalty. So we act on your behalf and in your best interest. So we also avoid conflicts of interest that may arise when a real estate transaction is going on. Sometimes these things arise. We'll talk about them slightly later in the document. 2, we owe you a responsibility of confidentiality. There's obviously information that is collected from you when facilitating a real estate transaction. This can be identification, personal information, title on the house, etc., etc. We must keep this information confidential. We're not going to be selling it to third parties or anything like that. And even when a relationship ends, this information is kept confidential with standards in place at the brokerage that provide for security of the information. We owe you a responsibility of full disclosure as well. So everything that we do in real estate is in writing. First and foremost. So every service that you're going to be getting will be compiled into any of our written agreements so that you know exactly what you're going to be getting. It's important that everything is in writing in this case because essentially if there's discrepancies or anything like that, there's a paper trail that we can go back to and say, hey, these are the things that we will be doing for you. Yes, no, etc. when it comes to everything. Everything is in black and white, and it is very straightforward for us to go back and look at what we had talked about previously. We owe you a responsibility of obedience. Everybody loves this one because we do what you say, essentially, as long as it is lawful, reasonable, and within ordinary instructions. So if you tell us to say something in a negotiation process, for example, as long as it's lawful, reasonable, and ordinary instruction, we will do it for you. Just Also be aware that if something that you suggest is not lawful or unreasonable, the agent must refuse. And in some cases, relationships may end if that does arise. So just keep that in mind. Generally, this doesn't happen, but sometimes you get all different types of things that happen in real estate. So number 5 is we owe you a responsibility of reasonable care and skill. Every single agent that is going into the real estate profession is going to be doing their education. There's a bunch of courses that are involved in getting into the industry, and they owe you the care and skill that comes along with those. On top of that, there's experience that everybody gets while doing transactions, either buying or selling homes, that there's care and skill that comes above and beyond that because of the experience that agents will have in regards to this. So just keep that in mind, that there's a care and skill that we owe you every single time that we're doing a real estate transaction. And finally, full accounting, number 6. This is a responsibility to you in that obviously real estate involves money. So every single thing that an agent takes in, we must account for. Whether that be money, keys, documents, etc., it's all returned to you when a relationship ends, when an agreement ends. So for example, when we're listing a home, we get a key from you and put it into a key box so that other agents have access to your home. When a agreement ends, you obviously get your key back. Same thing with money. When there's deposits that come in, we obviously account for it and let you know what's going on with regards to that. Your responsibilities to us are quite straightforward. So just give us all information that could affect a transaction or our ability to act as your agent, simply to pay the fees and expenses that come out of an agreement. So if there's any fees or expenses that are in the agreement, simply to pay those. If you're doing an agency relationship with us, that will be at the end when a transaction is completed. And if you are doing a non-representation agreement with us, there's obviously services that we'll be providing you at a very small cost. You can have a customer relationship with a real estate professional. So this is number 3 of the 3 different agent relationships that you can have. If you're a member of the public, you're a customer. If you're not represented by a agent, then you're also a customer. Agents owe these people a responsibility to act honestly, use reasonable care and skill, and make sure that any information that they give to this person is correct. They can provide very surface level services, like giving them statistics or names of appraisers, mortgage brokers, or service providers, but we're not going to be giving them interpretation of this information or anything like that. Finally, conflicts of interest. So sometimes in a real estate transaction, conflicts of interest arise because of, for example, me as an agent selling your home, but me as an agent also having a buyer client that's interested in your home. We can show your home all day and all night. That's not a conflict of interest. What happens when a offer is written and there's money on the table, however, that becomes a conflict of interest because we obviously don't want to be getting in the middle of 2 clients that we represent on both sides. So there's 3 ways that we can remedy this. Obviously, we can get another agent into the mix, either for the buyer or the seller. Both buyer and seller can stay with the same agent, but in a customer relationship. So a client relationship will end in this case. But what most often happens in a conflict of interest where a agent is helping both the seller and the buyer is an agreement is actually written up between both seller and buyer that state that the agent is just going to be simply facilitating a transaction. What this means is they're not going to be acting on behalf or in interest of either side of the party. They become an impartial mediator, essentially, so that information flows through the agent, but they're not going to be giving advice or any biased opinion to either side of the transaction. And it just needs to be understood that you simply become a middleman and not a agent on either side of the transaction. We become impartial when we're dealing with this type of thing. We're not giving confidential advice or support to only one side or the other. And we can obviously give both sides statistics and information, and generally we do because it helps people interpret what they need to be doing in a transaction, but we're not going to be interpreting that information or anything for either side. We can give both sides, obviously, agreements to purchase or sell, lease, or other relevant documents. And then we pass on the information to both parties. We simply are a go-between in this case. And we keep you informed on the progress as to what's going on. This document just helps you make informed choices about your relationships in a real estate transaction. So going through this document, we just talked about the different types of relationships that you can have with a real estate professional. We talked about the responsibilities that both parties bring to the table in a real estate transaction. And we also talked about conflicts of interest. This is a very straightforward document. It's only 2 pages. At the bottom, there's just room for signing, just saying that you have read and understood this document. And if you, again, have any questions, do not be hesitant to email me at info@revre.ca, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you very much for watching this video. And in the next one, we will be talking about how to use DocuSign, which is the online document program that we use to really cut down on paper at Revre. So thank you again very much for watching this, and we will see you in the next video.